Okay, so welcome back to Cracks in Postmodernity. We have Ryan Czerwonko, who I met on Instagram a couple months ago now, and we've been talking back and forth. I came to one of your plays, and we're going to talk about James Dean and James Franco today. But before we do
Fantastic.
that, tell us some of your background so people can get to know you better.
Yeah, I'm Ryan. I'm an actor and a filmmaker in New York, and originally from the Midwest. And I traveled around a lot. I started my career in Chicago, and then I went to Atlanta, and then I moved to New York 5 years ago, and I fucking love it here.
Mhm.
And uh, I do a lot of. I started doing stuff on stage, but the past 7 or 8 years, it's been a ton of TV and
Mhm.
some film. But then in my own personal artistic life, I make films. I've made about a dozen short films. I just completed one, and recently I started this group called Adult Film, which
Mhm.
focuses on theatrical performances and film screenings and lots of other things. And it's really just a platform for artists to get share and get stuff seen. And it's the play that you were referring to.
Mhm.
Our first big event was this immersive theater performances across an apartment, and now we're getting ready to do a big film and theater festival this summer. So
Nice.
that's, and I teach acting, and that's it. Acting, acting, acting.
Yep,
Life.
that's the life. So speaking of acting, let's start with James Franco because there's a lot to say. So yeah, I was just telling you that I was probably a senior in high school when I first became conscious of James Franco. And it just was quickly very captivated. Ended up ordering all of his movies on Netflix back when they had the DVDs before the streaming services. And I couldn't articulate what it was that was so captivating. In retrospect, now I have a lot to say, but so yeah, I watched all his movies. I remember when Palo Alto came out, I was a
I love
freshman.
that movie.
Yeah.
Great movie.
And then I went to his book signing. They had it at Barnes
Thank
and
you.
Noble in the Village. And I went and I met him, and it was just really surreal. But no, ever since then, and I guess that was like what, 10-ish years ago, 12 years ago. He's done a lot. So there's a lot to say. So
I
yeah, tell me your initial thoughts on him.
my history for James Franco. Well, I'll tell you my history with him first. I too, I don't know when I became aware of him, probably just watching like Spider-Man and stuff when I was like
Mhm.
14, 13 or something like that. And but then when he started getting into all the performance art and the filmmaking and the weirder stuff, that's when I was really, he was a big like role model for me in my 20s when I was kind of starting to get, I didn't put it into practice until later on, but having kind of like an example of someone that's expanding just beyond
Mhm.
strictly acting. And but I was really into him, and I was living in Chicago, and I was seeing a play at the Goodman. I think he was doing Of Mice and Men there.
Okay.
Was it Goodman or Steppenwolf? No, he was doing Of Mice and Men and Steppenwolf, and I was at the Goodman, and I saw him at the Goodman, and I was just like, "Hey, I think I like grabbed him and like turned him around or something. I was like, I love your work, you know. I was like, oh, thanks, man, like smile, whatever. And then little like years later, I auditioned for an episode of The Deuce, and I
Mhm.
booked it, and he was the director. So I got to
Wow.
spend a day on set with him, and him and Maggie Gyllenhaal and David Krumholtz, and I fucking loved The Deuce so much. That's one of my favorite shows that there's
Mhm.
ever been, and I loved him playing twins in it, and he was great to work with on set. So that was like
Wow.
surreal for me, definitely. So,
What was it like interacting with him though on that level?
uh, well, it wasn't like super intimate. He's doing a ton of shit. He's directing the thing, and
Yeah.
the kind of the nature of the set is like you really only you're really kind of only interacting with the director like when you're up and it's time to
Yeah.
like do a take or rehearse or something. Otherwise, you're talking to the other actors. But he was really personable and super complimentary, and we did a lot of like improv on some things, and he was throwing shit around and trying stuff, and uh, he looked great. I don't know, it was great. It was cool.
Okay, so you got that first-hand experience with him. So yeah, so what are some of your thoughts on just his public image, his persona? Because there's just so much going on there.
Well, I think there's a couple of stages. There's the first stage of standard. James Dean mold, doing pretty commercial movies. And then he's, around 2010 or whatever, he started when he was started getting like 5 graduate degrees at one time and
Yeah.
popping up in all these strange places and doing performance art. I thought things got really, really interesting. I don't think he's um, I admire him as an actor. I don't think he's the one of the great actors, but I think
Mhm.
he's one of the great, what is it, like a Renaissance man or something? I mean, I think he's a person. I think very few celebrities who have his level of fame and financial freedom use their time and resources to like literally just obsessively educate and better themselves in that way. Like, is there any other star who ever did anything like that?
Probably not. I mean, I agree that he's not one of the greatest actors, but I do think he's one of the greatest performance
No,
artists
I agree.
of
I
our
absolutely
time.
agree. Yeah.
Like that's what he specializes in, and acting is his main medium
Yes.
of art.
And then there's the phase after that, which is post Me Too.
Yeah,
So, you
which
know,
I think is part of the performance art. I have to say.
oh, and,
Yeah.
expand.
Um, we'll get into that.
We'll get
Well,
into it.
let's get to
I
the
promise.
let's go to the basics first, and then
Yeah.
that's like the late phase Franco. But for me, so I think what captivated me so much in the beginning was that as a performance artist, like I think his whole mission is this what I perceive to be like a very postmodern style meta commentary on truth as something elusive. Truth is something that we can't fully grasp. And that's kind of, I don't know, fluid, kind of liquid all over the place. Um, he forces you to really call into question so many of the social, I don't know, categories, norms that we have, whether it's about acting, whether it's about reality itself, like what's real from what's not, gender, all these things. But especially for me, this notion of the spectacle, like things that get people's attention that may not have any substance at all, and yet they're alluring, yet they draw your attention and you can't stop looking. And I think you see that from the fact that he's doing all these things at once, these grad programs, stage plays, movies, TV shows. He's on Instagram. Now he's on, his name is coming up with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp.
Oh yeah.
And it's like he's all over the place and you can't stop looking, but what exactly is he? You don't know. And I think that's the meta commentary on what is truth, what is reality.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think likening him more to, I think he's more like Andy Warhol than
yeah,
any other figure.
I didn't think of that, but that's super accurate. Yeah.
Because, I just watched the Andy Warhol Diaries thing on
Mhm.
Netflix, and I really did like learning about Warhol's personal life. I really didn't like the yassification treatment
Mhm.
of it. I didn't like cutting to this like mousy girl every
Yeah.
5 minutes talking about trauma. I'm just like, come on, man! Like these
Yeah.
guys are crazy. These guys were nuts. Like
Yeah. No.
like come on, it's anyway. But it's so the whole thing was like a major to me was like majorly applying today's whatever you call it, trends, standards, whatever, retroactively, and I really don't like when people do that. But you know, what I got from the documentary was that sense of like the total self as performance,
Mhm.
and he really, I think what Franco did with it was even more radical because he in everyone's perception he was this relatively straightforward, hot guy actor, pretty boy, whatever, and then he just from within that, there's like 6 layers of like meta commentary
Yes.
on that. So yeah, I think he's a real art.
Yeah. And now that you mention Warhol, like I definitely do think there is a camp kind of vibe going on because I mean, camp has a lot to do with performance art in general, but just the fact that it's this ironic, paradoxical commentary on, again, on the self, on reality, on truth, that makes you think about, like, again, what is artificial, what is a deception versus what is true, what is real, and all the stuff that he's doing. Again, it's like, is he just this pretty boy actor? Is he, is he a scholar? Is he a rapist? Like,
Yeah.
what is he?
It also, when he was in the before the Me Too stuff and when he was kind of in the height of all of that, it also reminded me of like another touchstone for that for me is early Lana.
Mhm.
And because I really feel like when like Lana was like the image, it was like Marlena Dietrich or Garbo, it was the image. And since since then in her career and self representation, whatever, Lana has let us see, like the down to earth her. Like that's where her music and her public persona has gone. So she's much more personal now. But when she was starting out, remember how people were like, "It's a fake name.
Mhm.
Like, is she from a trailer park or is she rich? Like, how dare someone invent a mythology around themselves?" And I think with her in that period and with Franco, like a lot of the ceaseless what the fuck that kind of energy that people had about it, or like um, I think it was. I think anytime someone really expands the mold, people get really scared and super critical. So I think to have a celebrity of James Franco's stature to play with the public so much, I think they got really resentful of him and wanted to punish him for being, you know, not just an avatar on which they could project things, because if your avatar is doing this weird fucking shit, what does that say about you? So I think they wanted to keep the clean pretty boy commercial film zeitgeisty type thing. And then when he started going against that, uh that's when the anger and ill will started
And
building
that's
towards
what
him.
I mean. Speaking of camp, you also see that with people like Oscar Wilde, who was doing something
Totally.
very similar, and then the public is fascinated by him again, the sense of the spectacle, this ironic commentary on English society at the turn of the century, and then they got pissed off with him, so they punished him. They
Man,
humiliate.
you're right.
Yeah, I didn't
I,
think of that until now. There's definitely a parallel with Wilde there.
wow.
Yeah. But so I'm thinking about one of the first like feature articles I read about him when I was a freshman was in the New Yorker. And this guy follows him to NYU or to wherever he was doing one of his grad programs, one of his many grad programs. And the author, the interviewer poses these questions. He says, first is, can James Franco possibly be for real? If he is, then just logistically, how is this all possible? And perhaps the biggest mystery of all, why is Franco doing it? Are his motives honest or dishonest, neurotic or healthy, arrogant or humble, ironic or sincere? Should we reward him with our attention or punish him with our contempt? Is he
Yeah.
genuinely trying to improve himself, or is he messing with us, using celebrity itself as the raw material for some kind of public prank? I think this is awesome.
Yeah, I think that gets at the because in a world that's so I feel like he's commented like the extending celebrity into those places is like really stretching the emptiness of the idol or the icon or the I mean, which is what Warhol does when he gets the Marilyn triptychs and all that shit. But yeah, it's like if I was at that position of fame and money and the opportunity to basically do whatever project I wanted, whether it was personal or from a studio or something like that. It's like
Mhm.
that's really it's going really far out there to the edges of human. I mean, could you just imagine being that rich and being that famous and I think all of his actions, like the naive or sophisticated, the neurotic or healthy, it's like he's commenting on how stupid it is that we worship celebrities in some way.
Also, yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's the emptiness of celebrity culture, but
how
also,
how ultimately meaningless it is.
yeah, I mean, the absurdity of it all. That's definitely a big theme you see. But also, I wonder if it's like a critique of elites being free to do whatever the hell they want without
Yep.
any commitment to anything that's substantial, without commitment to anything that's true, that's lasting. Maybe it's him critiquing his own class.
Yeah.
How, like real artists who don't have these kind of elite connections don't have the freedom to really experiment with their art forms or to not, I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's like this uprooting of the elites to just flow wherever. Um,
Hmm.
but doesn't mean anything. Like, is it all just empty, having all this money and all these resources?
Yeah, I don't think it means. I mean, maybe what it seems like he's getting at to me is that it doesn't mean anything other than you're alive.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Mhm. But what do you like when you look at? First of all, he's done like so many movies. I've lost count, but the range of movies, the kinds of movies, like it's really all over the place. Like you have these corny movies, like I don't want to say corny, but like basic movies like
yeah,
Spider-Man, And then you have like the Judd Apatow, because Pineapple Express is Judd Apatow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have that, then you have the gay movies, you have these weird avant-garde ones. Like it's really such a range. Why though? Like why won't he just stick with in one lane?
I yeah, I grew up watching all the Spider-Man and the whatever, the reruns of Eat, Pray, Love or whatever on Showtime
Yeah.
or something like that. And then I was a huge stoner in college, and I was my friends and I went to see, I think we went to see Pineapple Express like 5 times.
Wow.
And I was just really obsessed with that movie. um I don't know why. That was like when Apatow was like really new and fresh, and
Hmm.
uh I think it was Apatow. Anyway, but and then in terms of the acting, like 127 hours is a fucking great performance.
That was grueling. That
It's
was
a
very hard
really
to
great
watch. Oh my
performance,
God.
and I mean he's great. He's really good in the Disaster Artist too, and I love Spring Breakers,
Why?
uh, because it had that new. It was like that was like the beginning of like the big A24 thing, and like it hadn't. It was new. It was like a new vibe, and it wasn't so you know commenting on itself endlessly, repeating the formula endless. Now it's like A24 has a look just like Netflix has a look, just like it's so uh packaged and like laughable in a way now. But Spring Breakers was like, what the fuck is this?
Explain
Um,
A24 to me because people have tried and I still don't fully get what the
it's like it's like it's a studio that people used to think of as like the it's like a big quote unquote independent film studio, which is really just which is really just studio films. And I feel like 10 years ago, it was very like, this is where the cutting edge art films that aren't so arty that no one knows about them, but are kind of in the popular consciousness. Like that's where those films came from. But now 10 years later, it's like they keep doing, it's always like poverty porn or some like, it's like poverty porn or like Hereditary over and over, or like these like gruesome hipster horror films. So I don't know. I feel like it kind of like collapsed in on itself in some way. So it's just like kind of a joke now. But even though I mean, they still make good stuff. But like, it's just so ubiquitous now that it might as well be Netflix or something. I don't know.
Mhm.
Um,
Interesting. Yeah, because I mean, I couldn't bring myself to watch Spring Breakers. I don't have the stomach for it.
why?
Freaks me out. It was so, I mean, it was that King Cobra I couldn't watch. Go, I found out about recently, but like they're these kind of dystopian, psychosexual, teeny. It's about like frats and hazing, and Nick Jonas is in it. But it's like, yeah, it's like the dystopian sexual kind of teen vibe that I'm just like, this is going somewhere that I don't know. I think it's perhaps a commentary on like the fringes of our sex drive, this the kind of absurdism that we can reach if we just like I don't know. I mean, I don't watch them, so I can't really say much, but I
Yeah,
think
but all
there's
of that.
something there, sure.
That's great. Like he does do a lot of stuff about there's like no one is so obsessed about the fringes of their sex drive as he
Mhm.
is.
Yeah.
Like that's yeah.
And the destructiveness of it. I mean, we can look at paleo, we can look at Freud, that like the sex drive is ultimately very much tied to violence, to death.
Yeah.
But I think there's something there with like this fascination with, late teens, early 20s college kids and their sexuality and how, I don't know, this kind of free spirit, sexual revolution spirit, like is very alluring. But at a certain point, you hit this wall and you realize like it's dangerous, it's
Yeah.
risky. Um,
Well, yeah, I thought it was interesting. I think in that New York article, they were like talking about Palo Alto or these other films that
yeah.
he's directed or whatever, and they kind of like viewed it through the lens of him having a thing about like prolonged adolescence,
Yeah.
and that he was trying to like work through it through that stuff. And I think that's
Interesting.
yeah, I think that's really that makes sense because you know I would not make a like on the list of things that I would make a movie about. I don't give a fuck about anyone under 27. I wouldn't make a movie about 17-year-olds. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just not like I don't really watch movies about. I mean, sometimes, but not totally. But like, I'm not really intrigued by movies about teenagers. I'm not really intrigued by like teen music.
Mhm.
So it was interesting that he chose those subjects like in well, he didn't make Palo Alto. Gia Coppola made Palo Alto, but
Yeah,
he
he wrote
wrote
the book.
Palo
Yeah.
Alto. That's interesting that he's like kind of fixated on it.
Yeah, so I think the like eternal youth thing definitely ties into James Dean
Yes.
because that's I think that's the Adonis archetype, the eternally young, beautiful male who dies before aging. And we see that in Dorian Gray as well.
Well,
You
the
know,
thing about prolonged adolescence that was, the thing about a 30 plus man making something about prolonged adolescence, that's what is interesting to me because um, this film that I just made,
mhm.
it's called Last Call, and we're editing it, and it's about like a hustler. That's what they used to call sex workers.
Yes.
Um, uh, a hustler who's has like has a James Dean obsession, and but he's also sort of uh, looking for a father in some sense of uh, closure in that. And the journey of the, I mean, I'm not really giving it away, but like the journey of the character is like, my screenwriter wrote it, and I was like, that's cool that this guy's obsessed with James Dean, but like I'm 33 and James Dean died when he was 24. Like,
Mhm.
isn't it a little strange? And
Mhm.
but then I took that sort of strange feeling about that and put that into the character and was like, this guy can't grow up.
Mhm.
He's like holding on to this James Dean thing, even though he's like aged out of it.
Yeah.
Um, so the film is just kind of like him working through that, through sex, through daddy role play, through all this kind of stuff. So I think the statement of the film is like, how do you accept your inner father and become
Mhm.
a real adult,
Interesting.
and sacrifice that ideal of youth. So I think that's kind of what he's. I think that's what he's getting at in
Interesting.
creating some of this stuff, and that's what I did with this film. Even though I didn't know that's what I was doing when I started. But
Wow. Yeah, because it seems like James Franco is like dead set on not allowing that fascination to evolve. Because what you're saying, it's like that's a healthy evolution from being, obsessed with the cult of youth, but
yeah,
then recognizing, okay, but within that fascination is my own call.
mortality. Yeah,
Yeah. Like, yeah, that I'm going to die, but that I have the capacity to be a father, that I could,
yeah.
foster someone else's youth, that I could offer something to them. But I mean, his whole career seems like obsession with this to the point that it becomes super perverse and dangerous. And like he says it himself that he's really fascinated by the like obscuring of boundaries of perception. He
Mhm.
talks about it when he talks about his sexuality, that he says, I'm gay until the point of intercourse, penetration, that, I'm gay in my art, but straight in real life.
Which, like, who knows if that's he's just saying so? You know what I mean? It's like he could have
Yeah,
been
I mean, I
nothing
don't think he
vocal.
like. Well, this is the other thing. In this Playboy interview he did a while ago, he mentions this book, Gay New York.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've read that before.
So in the book, it talks about what, like the 20s and back then when you had like the what do you call it, like trade, like the I forget what all the terms were. But yeah, no, like your sexuality is not determined by who you
Yeah.
had sex with.
Well,
It's what position you took. So like again, perception. Who decides what category you are? Where are the boundaries? That's his fascination.
this I think it was in the New Yorker as the article as well. They talk about this queer man that mentored Franco,
Mhm.
and he wrote some book, and in the book, queer is like, dude, the word queer. I'm just like, oh my god, it makes me want to like puke. I used to like the word, and I always thought of it for myself as a sense. Well, this author that Franco was mentored by defines queerness as against the normal rather than the heterosexual. And
Yeah.
this is my problem. I see people posting every time, it's like, I don't know, something came out an article in the New York Times came out the other day where like, it's like now straight people are trying, girls are trying poppers. And a bunch of people, I saw the usual reposts of it and saying like, straight people ruin everything. I'm just like, so is your entire existence like against straightness? I don't understand.
Well, that's why I do think there's value in what he's doing, because it makes us question, well, who draws up these categories? Like, what is the
Totally.
basis? Like it really makes you think.
And it just drives me nuts because like by it's like contradicting itself twice when someone does, because I'm like, you're not only like you're what am I trying to say? It's like, first off, straight people ruin everything. Like, how do you know that person is straight? What is straight? Like, how do you know this person is
Mhm.
what are they? Maybe they're 6% gay or whatever. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
like, so I'm like, you're at the same time that you're demanding that people accept you for what you are and free you of a category, you're also categorizing people in the same moment. And like that's coming from like a
Yeah.
place of that's coming from a place of like freedom from all my trauma and everyone that hurt me and everyone that made me feel terrible for being gay growing up, rather opposed as opposed to like freedom to, which
Yeah.
is an active, positive way of being and relating to other people that doesn't come from a place of lack. It comes from a place of like curiosity and love. And I think that's, I think with all of his like, it was so when I was like 25 and still being like, am I bisexual? Am I gay? Am I queer? Am I that, all of this stuff, like, which, like, I guess I'm bisexual. I guess that's, and I used to like the word queer, but I don't now. And now it's so boring to even think about what I am. But anyway, but in my 20s, I was incredibly inspired by what he was doing because I was like, oh my God,
Mhm.
like this guy's like, uh, it's archetype. It's kind of like archetype. It's like a sort of like bisexual.
Yeah, which is Dean's whole vibe. But
Yeah,
like,
totally.
but it's then this makes you go further in question, but like who is the self? Like who determines what myself is? Like is myself or what I conceive, the categories I use to conceive of myself, like is this all a performance? Is this all just a response to like creating a social kind of persona? Or is this really me? How do I know? This is what I think is like the genius and also the danger of postmodern thought in general, that like it can just call everything into question and make everything totally vapid and empty, that it's just
Yeah.
like a blob of nothing. Or it can make you go deeper and deeper and be like, okay, but is there something true at the core of these questions? Like, can I know the true self, or is it all purely performance and deception? Is it all nothingness?
I, I think the gay in my art, straight in my life thing, I think that's what Paglia talks about when she says like the world needs a bisexual
Yes.
responsiveness. Like I think even if he is, even if he doesn't have more than like the most minute actual sexual attraction to men, the willingness to the longing, the calling, like
Mhm.
to play with that in his persona and self and everything, like there's something so great about that, and that's what, relatively straight the world would be a better place if relatively straight people did have that curiosity. And also the reverse, I'm like, gay people need to have more of a bisexual responsiveness because you're literally like demonizing straight people. I'm like, you came from two straight people,
Yeah.
guys, like,
Yeah. And
um
again, it's like, what are these categories even? Like, what is their basis? They
yeah.
don't, there's such a flimsy foundation, you know? So I think, yeah, like that's one of the things that we get from his whole persona. The other side of this, though, where again, like he's fascinated with perception, with categories, boundaries, is when we're talking about consent. And this has gotten him into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Um, and I that's why I'm saying it's like I see this resistance to allowing this curiosity, this whatever, to mature into a real, I don't know, like a mature position. Like he has allowed himself to get caught up with minors and to like
Yeah,
not
of course.
acknowledge, like he said when with this 17-year-old accusing him of like assaulting her, he admitted to DMing her and he was like, look, like she said she was 17. I acknowledged it. But like if this girl likes me and wants to talk to me and she's consenting, then like what's the problem?
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
like what is consent? What constitutes consent? What constitutes desire and attraction? You know?
whether or not it's like morally wrong or something, I again personally, I'm like, I do not know how you could entertain a 17-year-old in a a sexual man. I just like find people under 25 like physically, emotionally, intellectually for the most part, but I find a lot of people below that age, I'm just not into it. I like a fully formed like man or woman, you know I don't kind of the like, the bone structure and the sinewyiness that you get when you're a little older, and the facial marks and wrinkles. I'm really intrigued by that. I would never. I don't know why he would knowing the consequences and him being such a huge star. I don't know why he would engage with someone who is questionably 17 or 18 or what. I don't really personally understand that, but you know, I don't know.
Yeah, no, and I just think like again this very postmodern sensibility of everything being fluid, everything being about perception and calling things into question. Like again, it's valuable, but you hit a wall at a certain point where it starts to become dangerous.
No,
You know,
totally. And I mean, like, it's not to say like I'm like, hey, a 17-year-old has a fucking sexuality. Like, come
yeah,
on, let's not be silly. But yeah, it can definitely get you into trouble. And then the assault stuff with the stuff that happened at his school.
hmm
Um, that's really not great. That's not great. I think I don't know what he did. He screamed at some girls to get naked or tried to make them do actual sexual acts or something while they were filming a project or something like that. But in terms of that, I'm just like, that's yeah, it goes right along with what you're saying, like the getting dangerous. You're so famous and you're going so far out on a limb of experimenting of what is humanity, what is boundaries, that yeah, you start thinking behavior like that is acceptable, or that it's not acceptable, but I don't know, justifiable or something. And it's not. It's that's totally wrong. But then on the other end of it, it's like, okay, he's basically lost some kind of a career because of it. He has done a multi-million-dollar settlement
hmm
with the the accusers, and he's been shamed by countless millions of people. Like, I think that's enough punishment.
yeah.
And it's like, does that the thing with the 17-year-old and the actions while he was filming this stuff, like, does that cancel out every other thing he's done in his life? It's like,
Hmm. So yeah, I mean, so this the fact that um so his celebrity, his fame can go as far from I don't know, like it goes all the way to the fringes of like public scandal. That like, is this why he's doing this? Is it because he wants to take his fame all the way to those fringes and see will he still be getting attention? And the reason why I say this is because so he wrote this essay for the New York Times about his selfies on Instagram, and it's super telling because he's saying, I take selfies because this is the only way to get people's attention now, and attention is the only way to have power. um, so it's like he's experimenting to see what do I have to do to get attention.
so you think that was part of that stuff was part of the experimentation?
Yeah, I think it's like he has this fascination with again perception, fame, celebrity. What does it take to get people's attention? He's like, when I post a picture of something I wrote or a place I traveled to, I don't get that many likes. When I post a selfie of me in bed, me shirtless, me with Seth Rogen, I get a lot of likes. He's like, well, if attention is power in this industry, then that's what I'm going to do. But I think again, the dark side of this is, well, if I create these public scandals, I go all the way to the fringes of what's considered normal. Will people still look at me? So perhaps these public scandals are a success for him. But even, I mean, and as crazy as that is, I think again, this forces us to call into question like, what is this celebrity culture that we've created that we give attention to people who one lack substance or totally vapid, but also who do absurd, violent,
Totally.
perverse things. So like again, he not only wins the attention for himself, but he's the one who's like forcing us to ask the questions. He's the one who's like, I don't know, it's a lot.
I think it was interesting that he wrote that article. Like, that article's from 2013, right?
Mhm.
When did
Yeah.
selfie start? I didn't get Instagram until like 2016 or something, so I wasn't I missed that whole beginning of that. But I thought the way he was writing about the selfie when it was still kind of like, can you believe that people just take pictures of themselves? It's just like it kind of precipitated his actions and the things he was doing with the drag, and it's like,
Yes.
it's like now all of a sudden everybody has a fucking dress on a fucking cover of a
Yep.
magazine. So it's like he was kind of doing a lot of things and getting a lot of shit for them that 8, 10 years later are sort of like culturally celebrated.
Yeah. No, and I think that's the thing with the selfies. Like we do it mindlessly, but in reality, like this is us kind of experimenting, questioning what is the true nature of the self? Like, is it something
Yeah,
that I determine if I'm the one taking the picture? But then what about the person the audience? What is their perception of myself? Am I just creating a self that's going to resonate with what I think people are going to like, my viewers, people who follow me? And again, like this is when you see that Wildian kind of camp sensibility that, you know, is artifice, is what's fake, what's empty, what's
and
most
sort of like
subjective.
and with a deadpanness about like those pictures, those pictures of him like shirtless, and it's just like he just looks like haggard and like,
Well, that's the fun part, that it's like he's not even trying to be sexy. He's just
Yes.
like, look, I took a shirtless picture. I didn't even try to look good. So like, again, that itself is a commentary on what is considered attractive, what is
Yeah.
sexy, you
Mhm.
know. But no, so then like this is when I start to get into like some weird conspiratorial stuff, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I see a little bit of a thread of like occult, weird, esoteric, spiritual stuff going on
Mhm.
in all of his work. And I first noted it when he was in General Hospital with his mom. His mom was in the episode with him.
Really.
Yeah, and she was an astrologer and she was reading his fortune. I was like, okay, that's cute because like, these bored housewives watch soaps and they like astrology.
Yeah.
But then I started to see other things. So like he did a lot with Marina Abramovich, who's known. I mean, people say that she like dabbles in like occult kind of rituals, but again, it's like the supreme support, performance artist who again calls into question what is true from what is false. Like, and I think the connection you see there is like, does our culture worship what is false, what is empty, what is pure appearance without substance? Then you see him doing he did the drag photo shoot with Terry Richardson, who also is like, people say does weird like sex ritual kind of stuff with minors.
Yeah.
He did this music video that had like a satanic ritual going on. So I think like drawing this all together, again, it's like, do we worship, do we create these rituals out of falsehood, out of these idols that again hold no substance, that ultimately drive us to our own demise, to our own destruction? And I think about this when I see what's going on with the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, because his name keeps coming up. And it's like these
Because
public,
he saw her with a
they
black eye
say
or
that
something.
she cheated on Johnny with James Franco,
Oh,
and
okay.
that if it's true, then like he would have seen her black eye, but he didn't. I mean, I couldn't follow this, but I think the fact that they're publicizing this whole trial and that James Franco's name is coming up, it's like the public spectacle as some type of ritual, as some kind of I don't know, a liturgy in a sense. And the fact that Franco's coming up, it's like, and it makes me think of Wild, that like
Hmm.
people were so fascinated with him and then they punish him publicly, they humiliate him, which becomes a ritual of in itself, a sacrifice even. But again, like the ritual, the spectacle exposes that where people's hearts lie, like exposes that we're so obsessed with the image, with the artifice, with, you know, mm, to the fact that like we'll give ourselves completely to something that's empty, that means nothing, that
Yeah, I mean, the
you
Johnny Depp
know,
Amber Heard thing absolutely means nothing.
yeah, everyone's transfixed by it. So again, it's like it's this kind of ritualistic thing that shows us like what do we really worship, like where do our hearts lie, what are our commitments? I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm still working on it, but I think there's definitely something there.
No, I mean, like, and if, even if it's not, because it's like what's authentic and what's an idea. And
Mhm.
it's like he definitely did that on purpose
Yeah.
over a period of time, being like, I'm going to pepper this occult interest. And perhaps it is like Marina Abramovic. And it's like, you don't even have to be it's like Marina Abramovic doesn't have to practice something
Yeah,
to
no.
make a piece of art about it.
Hmm.
Um, which, you know, I think about a lot as an actor, but I don't think that way in my life. I mean,
Hmm.
I guess I do. I guess we all do subconsciously.
Sure.
We all play with dress and um, style and whatever to try to coordinate some public image. But I don't think I would. It's not in me to make some interest I have into a performance art commenting on my life. I'd probably just put it into my work, which
Yeah. Yeah, and like with this, I mean, I also think there's this kind of sacrificial theme with James Dean's whole trajectory, the fact that he's again, it's like the god Adonis, that he's this beautiful young
yeah.
male, gets everyone's attention, um, but has to be sacrificed before he gets old because then the cult of youth, like then there's nothing interesting anymore, and that was Oscar Wilde's obsession when he wrote Dorian Gray,
Yeah,
and he
totally.
knew that like how destructive it was. He knew that like Dorian was going to have to die at some point if he didn't accept his aging.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, like the movie that James Franco did about Dean was, I don't know. I found it fascinating. I found it interesting how he picked up on the whole daddy issue thing, that like his whole career was him crying out for his father's attention. And that even like the sexual relationships with other guys, like you see that fatherly dynamic there.
Yeah, and I think that's like I think when people are like what's your daddy issue, it's like it's not literally about your father. It's about your inability to father yourself.
Hmm.
Like it's a because to truly let go of the father and find that within yourself, that means you have to take full responsibility for yourself.
Yeah.
So the neurotic fissure that people experience and they have that kind of behavior, they just can't accept full adulthood because accepting full adulthood means that you're going to die.
Mhm.
So or part of it is. And that
But yeah,
you're
but
really
also that you die in like being a father is like you're giving to other people without
yes.
expecting them to like gratify you, which is a death in itself. So like
Yes.
fatherhood, accepting your own fatherhood is a preparation for death, or an acceptance of death in a way. Yeah. What did you think of the movie, the Franco
Oh
movie?
God, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I saw it when I was a teenager, and I was just like, oh
Yeah.
my God, I love James Dean, I love James Franco. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's been
Maybe.
forever. It's like a mediocre movie. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
There's lots of interesting things going on, and his performance is good, quite interesting in it. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, like I learned a lot just about the whole acting world during those times, like the method acting and all that.
yeah. Well, I was just yeah. I'm obsessed with it, and I just reread a book called Method Actors, and then I listened to that podcast that
Mhm.
I had a lot of issues with.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, but I think yeah, like in addition to the daddy stuff with like I don't know if this is true, but I heard Marlon Brando would put cigarettes out in his arm or something, which is like super symbolic and Freudian.
Yeah,
Probably.
I mean that's I hope that happened. uh, yeah, but Brando was another type of he basically experienced an unparalleled level of fame
Mhm.
and influence. Like I think the sexual revolution happened because of Marlon Brando.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, okay, so uh, the film and play Streetcar Named Desire.
Yes.
Uh, the play happened in 1947, and the film was in 1951.
Mhm.
And in that film, well, he revolutionized acting with that film. I'm not saying he's my favorite actor, the greatest actor that ever lived, but he was a very unique person, and he revolutionized acting with that film and brought like male. He feminized men in a way with his
Mhm.
vulnerability in that film on a mass scale that hadn't been present before. And also in that film, that's the film that popularized the T-shirt.
Oh, okay.
Like I think the sexual shockwave that he created in the world with his with the T-shirt and his sensual masculinity, I think that eventually led to the sexual revolution because there was no other figure or person that had there's no other singular person that had that type of influence. Even Marilyn Monroe was, even though
Mhm.
she was very very famous and a huge sexual icon, it was still like a stand. She was still like a feminine standard. So
Mhm.
because Brando was the first one to start crossing the gender line with that.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I never really read into Brando in that way or the t-shirt. But I think that like going back to the selfie phenomenon on Instagram, like I find the fact that like that men post selfies, especially like sexually charged ones, like we just take it for granted to be normal, but like that's
I know.
really not a normal thing historically that men want to be gazed upon. Again, the spectacle that men want to, you know, that's typically a feminine trait, but like
And the act of framing yourself in that way and the act of being seen in that way, I'm like, you don't think it's interesting that people do a lot of bisexually responsive things but don't see it that way. And I'm like, that's pretty gay. I don't know.
well, yeah, because the whole idea that you are going to post an image of yourself that's supposed to be erotically charged or get sexual attention. Again, it's this idea that men are the ones who look and women are looked at and like
Yeah.
prepare themselves to be looked at, want to be looked at. So, like, the fact that you're posting a picture to be looked at is implying you want men to look at you because, I mean, sure, of course, nowadays women will look at those pictures and like them and comment, whatever, but ooh, there's this sexually fluid thing going on that, again, like, well, it's interesting that you think that that's Brando, though. I never placed that.
I think that's like it's almost totally him. uh,
Mm,
but the posting of the erotic selfies and stuff, it's like I find that there's two. reactions happening with it. It's like either overstating the um damn, what did you just say? I forget, sorry.
No, that like you're implying that you want men to look at you because typically it's men who look and women who are looked at.
Yeah, it's like, and then I think the cultural reaction to that is like either overemphasizing the men looking at you in this sort of like very, in the way that homosexuality has become uh like such a sexual like spectacle in not just in homosexual culture but in mainstream culture too, or the underemphasizing where no one acknowledges that it's sort
Mhm.
of bisexual. And I think everyone would be healthier if we were somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. But so speaking of bisexuality, then I think there's also like James Dean also had this fascination with beautiful goddess-like women, but also maternal figures. Because you
Yeah.
see, so like the Marilyn thing, Pierre Angeli, who I guess he tried to marry, and then he was close with Liz Taylor, which I think was more of a maternal kind of bond.
Yeah, she's like, she's like an earth. But Marilyn too. I mean, they all had this like. Let me look at what Pure Angelica looks like.
I think it's this like
Um,
Venus archetype, like Adonis and wasn't that how it is? Adonis and Venus are together. I don't know.
but all of those women share a sort of like they're all very earth goddess like,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Okay,
and
let's do that.
just like they all have like huge bosoms. They're all kind, and I just have an image of him like laying on all of their bosoms
Yeah,
or something like a
yeah,
pieta almost like.
yeah. I can see
And
that.
and you know I forget what his relationship with his mother was like, but
Well, she died. No, so she slept with his dad was like how should I put it? She slept with some guy who wasn't her husband.
hmm,
And that's how James was born. And then she didn't want to be publicly shamed, so she asked the husband to raise him as his own. Then she died young, and he like pretended to be the father, but really was not affectionate at all because he's like, "This isn't my son." And that's when he kind of starts losing it when the dad tells him, "Like, I'm not your dad." And then he died.
yeah, I think it's an interesting. I think that's a and I think he had sex with women too. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
sure.
he was a
Why
lot of people think he was gay, but I'm just
not?
like relax.
But
Uh,
his relationship with women, I noticed this again with Dorian Gray, because Dorian seems like a kind of gay guy, and like
yeah,
what's his name, Lord whoever is like fascinated with him, but he has this relationship with Sybil Vane, who like the relationship is super childish. So it's like it makes me wonder, like, is he attracted to true women? Because when it comes to adult women, I think he has more of the maternal dynamic, like with Liz Taylor, but with Pierre Angeli, who's like still a girl, this
hmm,
pretty little spicy girl, it's like they're still kids.
yeah,
And then the fact that in Dorian Gray that her name is Sybil Vane, I think it was Palia who said something about like the fact that his attraction to her has to do with his own vanity, that it's not a fully formed adult heterosexual attraction. It's like basically it's an attraction to himself,
yeah. It's
which
a
is
reflection of his own beauty. Yeah.
yeah. So like I don't know. I think there's a lot of these archetypes going on in his life, but super driven by the tension with the mother and the father.
No, and he was like, yeah, I think he was looking at Brando in this sort of like fatherly or older brotherly way, and then you have Salminio looking at James Dean like that, and it's interesting.
Yeah, the unresolved father dynamic, also the narcissism,
Yes.
within how these relationships manifest. Like a lot of, especially I think in his case, like his attraction to men, perhaps having to do with like this desire to find himself or to like, I don't
Yeah.
know, seeing himself in these men. But I think again, so like you see towards the end of his life, he's doing all this car racing, this risky behavior, and you see this fascination with death. Um, Similar to Franco in the, I think like because Franco's willing to go as far as like, creating these public scandals, destroying
Yeah.
his career for the sake of his performance art.
Oh man.
Whereas with James Dean, willing to die to again to like hold on to the cult of youth, his
Yeah.
beauty.
In this book I just read, they were like he let go of the reins of his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure he was very alcoholic and drugs and all that was going on.
Yeah, and it just makes me think with Franco, like his again, this postmodern commentary on the absurdity of our culture, of what we consider to be true or valuable. Like if everything is absurd, if everything is empty, then like why live? Like why not just go all the way to the fringes until you die?
Yeah.
There's no real substance to our existence, to ourself,
Hmm.
you know. Yeah, a lot of parallels. I'm curious to see what's going to happen to Franco's career.
Well, I mean, it's like it's basically been. I worked with him after that happened because they couldn't like fire him from the Deuce because he was like what the show was about. So I worked with him after that happened, and but then after the Deuce, he hasn't really done anything since. And again, you know, I hope he's able to because I think people, whether he was doing it as performance art or whether it just happened, it's like people have errors in judgment, and he paid for it.
Yeah.
He literally paid for it. So I would love to see work from him again, and he's always been a huge inspiration to me, and I loved working with him.
What would you say your favorite movie or TV show of his is?
But definitely
Yeah.
of all of his stuff, I loved the world. I loved the dynamics he had with other people. I love that he was playing twins.
Hmm.
I mean, um, so that was my favorite. But what film? I don't know. I don't know about film. Probably 127 hours.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard to pick. Um, I feel like I connected most with Howl.
Howl.
Yeah, that's the one about Allen
Oh,
Ginsberg.
Howl. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw that. Yeah,
I
I like
mean, I hate Allen Ginsberg. I really don't like him.
that. Mm.
But I think Franco's portrayal of him was interesting. The other one we didn't mention is I Am Michael, which
Oh
doesn't.
yeah.
I Am Michael. I mean, there's a lot to be said because that movie really depicts um what I so like this horseshoe theory about traditional sexuality and queer theory. So like this idea that the normal sexual orientation narrative is like at the top of the horseshoe. It's like everyone has their category and everything's
Yeah.
nice and simple and clean cut. Whereas like again, the fringes, you have this traditional, I guess you can say heteronormative view that like sex is meant to be procreative, that blah 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 blah. And then on the other end, total fluidity, that everything's up in the air, which is kind of queer theory. And you see that like he starts out as this queer theorist, and all his gay friends are like, "Oh, just be a normal gay like us." And he's like, "No, like all these things that I'm reading." And then he goes all the way around and becomes like a fundamentalist and goes to conversion therapy. And it makes you see how there's something very religious about this postmodern kind of perspective about queer theory. Like you don't want to be, it's this disillusionment with what's considered normal for its own sake, and this fascination with again like what's beyond, something that's mystical, something that's mysterious. And like his path from queer theory to evangelicalism, like you see that he's not going in a different direction. Like it's all very much aligned because again, it's this fascination with what's abnormal, what's mysterious, what's against the status quo. Um, I don't know. I don't think it gets enough attention. It's like much better than these movies like Boy Erased that are just like, oh,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
a Mormon boy who was not accepted by his parents, and
Yeah.
then I accepted myself. It's like this shows no nuance. Like it doesn't.
Yeah. There's no
It pushes the standard narrative, which is boring.
yeah. There's no journey.
Yeah.
Um, hmm.
Yeah. Well, that being said, is there anything else you wanted to say about your movie and about James Dean and all that?
Just one more thought on Franco. I have seen a couple of those Faulkner adaptations that
Okay.
he's done, and I think that it's like with me I make tons of shit based on Tennessee Williams stuff, and I'm just like, oh, you're obsessed with Faulkner and you want to make movies about it, and Faulkner's very, it's a very different obsession than
Mm.
some of the other things you're obsessed with.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I admire that. But my movie, yeah, I'm gonna premiere it at the Adult Film and Theater Festival in Bushwick. Follow adultfilm.nyc and come to the festival.
Awesome. Anything else you want to plug before we wrap up?
That's it.
Is it cool? Well, Ryan, thank you for coming on. This,
Thanks. It was
this was
fun.
a fun time.
Thank you.
Awesome.